Hi, it's Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to the last episode of Career Coach Office Hours for 2021. I spend time talking with you about different elements of job search because I believe it doesn't have to be hard, difficult, painful, or take as long as it does for so many of you. And I'm just trying to find the chat option here on StreamYard. That should be able to do it. That it's the private chat. Let's see if I can find the public one. So I apologize for making this mistake here, but I have. I tried to correct one thing and I created a different problem. So there it is. So I'll simply say if you've got a question for me and you haven't sent it to me in advance of the show, you can put it into chat and I'll cover it in the course of today's show. And this is on Facebook Live. It's a LinkedIn Live. It's also on YouTube. Wherever you are and you happen to catch this show, you can put a question into chat for me. I'd be happy to respond. Um, I've started doing this last Friday and I really like it. I hope you do as well. And it's what I call a coffee toast. For those of you who are working, um, so often people are taken for granted professionally. They are pushed around, they are bullied, huge demands are placed upon them, and little appreciation gets thrown your way. I think that's wrong. So I want to acknowledge you as we come up on the end of 2021 for all the things that you've done to try and be better, to try and work hard, to put in an effort to be excellent. You may not be perfect. There are people who are always going to criticize you. It's just the way we are as human beings, apparently. But think in terms of how can you be great? What more can you do for yourself to command excellence, greatness? Not taking it easy, but to do things great. So, a quick toast for you. And again, before I start taking questions or responding to questions, feel free to put yours into chat. And I'll also say Happy New Year. Uh, I know it's going to be a shorter day for me today, but I want to continue doing office hours because people have questions for me and I want to be able to respond. So, the first question I received from someone is why do recruiters post on LinkedIn the same job posted some weeks or even days ago? Why do they do that? It's actually pretty simple. LinkedIn sells job slots, not ads. So let's say you're an employer and you purchase a slot from them. You can put any number of ads in there. But one of the things you start to realize is as time progresses, like on a job board, your job drops in position. So they hit the refresh option to bring it back to the surface. The reason they do that is they're still looking. They may be looking for a backup. They may still be looking for the person to hire, but the job is still open and they want to give it more visibility. So they refresh the ad. It costs them no more to do that. And they repost it in order to attract more people to apply. So understand, like if you're in a LinkedIn recruiter account, I know when I had the account, I don't know how it is today. When I had the LinkedIn recruiter account, I had a certain number of job slots that I could advertise with, 3, 5, don't remember. And I don't know what it is today because I'm not a recruiter anymore. But they're trying to fill a job. They want to make sure it's seen by new eyes. They refresh it. They repost it. So that's why they do it. It's really very simple. Next one is how can one be a great leader without a mentor? I think there are things you can learn independently, but people think in terms of mentorship as the only way to become a good leader. I think you can inject leadership into your system and into your DNA through reading, through watching quality content, by observing others who are not formally your mentor, by hiring a coach to support you. Like I coach people around leadership as well as helping them with career transitions, job searches, hiring more effectively, a whole host of different things. And I know there are other coaches who do the same thing. So recognize that there's lots of ways to cultivate your leadership, including putting yourself into situations in volunteer organizations where you can practice your leadership outside of the workplace and then bring those experiences back in. I know there was a non-for-profit I've have been involved with for many years, and I eventually ascended from a junior staff person into workshop leadership for the organization. And through that ascendancy, I gained more responsibilities, learned a lot. Yes, I got some mentorship, but most of it was self-taught through the experiences. And then at the very end, I got some mentorship around the decision-making process to approve my leadership for these retreats. And that helped me get across the finish line. You don't have to have a formal mentor every step along the way. What you can do is self-critique a lot. Learn through your reading, watching, listening, a lot of different ways, so that in this way you can learn and grow and cultivate your leadership. As a reminder, folks, if you're lurking in the background, and today you may not be, you may have taken off for New Year's Eve. But if you have a question for me, don't hesitate to put it in the chat. Why would a company that I've worked at for 14 years ask me for a resume for a promotion in that company? There's a couple of reasons for it. I believe one might be to demonstrate that they've had a fair process so that you're not the only person who may be applying or may be under consideration. And thus, you and other people internally and externally, they want to have a fair playing field. So, like the external candidates who submit a resume, the internal person, you, submits a resume as well so that they can evaluate you versus others. Yes, they've observed your work, but not everyone has who might be involved with the decision-making process. As a result, they want to see something in writing so that when they come to the interview phase and include you in that, and they will include you in that, they want to have a reference point because, like I said, not everyone who's going to be involved in the recommendation and decision is as knowledgeable about your work as you are. So make no assumptions. You're in a competitive situation. You may be advantaged as an existing employee, or you may be disadvantaged in that your manager doesn't want to lose you. So recognize that that happens too. And they're asking for the resume so that they have a point of evaluating you or a reference point for the evaluation process. Do recruiters ever have a hard time deciding who to hire? This is my opinion. And it starts off with the premise of recruiters don't hire you. They can reject you, but corporate recruiters don't actually hire you. They're in the process. They influence the real decision maker. Who's the real decision maker? The manager, their boss, the people in the organization who actually make the decision to hire and then refer the decision back to HR, back to the recruiter or business partner that they interact with to actually extend the offer. But functionally, recruiters don't hire, they screen. And if you can imagine what it was like in the gold rush days in the Wild West, where someone was sitting by the river and they had a pen, and the prospector was trying to make sure the silt, or the crap, as you will, went through the screen so the gold would stay on the top. That's the role of the screener. That's the role of the recruiter on the corporate side in the process. And I say that with no disrespect. You work hard, folks, but the hiring manager makes the decision, not you. And you may have had a situation where a hiring manager said, I've got this choice between two people. I'm fine with either. Who would you choose? That's an exception. The normal scenario is the hiring manager and their boss make a decision who to hire and then tell the corporate recruiter or business partner to extend an offer. And they go through the mechanics to extend it. Would you hire someone that was 10 minutes late to their interview? I'll speak from my experience in doing recruiting, which I did for what felt like 100 years, because to me it's 2.5. It's like dog years. I worked as a recruiter for more than 40 years. I always joked it was like 2.5 dog years to be a recruiter. So it felt like 100 years. So I'll simply say people were late for interviews. And it happens. And if you simply start off the conversation by saying, I'm sorry I was late. I hit traffic. There was an accident on the expressway or on the highway, or there was a delay on my train. People get that, especially if you put in a quick call in advance to say, I'm running a few minutes late because of such and such. If you don't have the person's number because you weren't given it or the agency didn't provide it, it's the way it is, and you just acknowledge it and move past it. So often people are late through no fault of their own, and if you apologize, acknowledge it, they'll move on. It's one of those topics that disappears. So let's continue on to the next question. What does it mean when HR calls you and said, there's a delay in the final hiring decision, and I'll call you soon to let you know whether yes or no. And a week later, and there's no response. Well, the first thing is they're still evaluating people. So understand from their side, they're not ready to drop down on one knee and propose marriage to you or perhaps to anyone else. They're still evaluating and assessing. So they haven't fallen in love with you yet, and they're stalling for time. I would follow up with the hiring person, or I think that you said they were HR. I'd contact HR as an email or as a quick phone call. The email might say, subject line, following up on what you told me last time, or following up to see if there's been a decision. The message might read something along the lines of, a week ago, you mentioned that you'd be in touch with me in about a week if there was a decision made, because you expected a decision to be made with regard to who was being hired for this role. I haven't heard from you yet. Have you chosen someone else? Am I still under consideration? If they say, oh, you're still under consideration, then there's a follow-up message that you can send. Do you think it might be useful for the hiring manager to meet with me again? And the reason you do that is because the more time passes, the more the favorable impression of you starts to wane. And thus, you want to create that favorable impression again, and thus go in there, offer yourself up for another meeting. HR may say, let me check with them and get back to you, or no, I don't think that's going to be necessary, which is don't hold your breath about this job. Or they may say, sure, I think that'd be a great idea. And I love recruiters who say that because they're giving you another chance to sell yourself. So what it means is you haven't been chosen yet and you haven't been rejected yet. You're still in limbo land. As a result, try and get yourself back in there after first determining whether or not they've gone in a different direction, you've been rejected, they just haven't told you. That's why I say get a message back to them so that in this way you know what's going on. Is it a good sign when an interviewer says, we'll be in touch? No, it means nothing. It's a throwaway statement. What they're saying to you is, hi, We'll be in touch. What does that mean? I know as a job hunter, you hang on every word that people say to you, and you think there's some version of deep meaning to it. I think they're just being polite. And in saying we'll be in touch, they're trying to offer up a degree of hope. We'll be in touch, yes or no. It could be a yes, it could be a no. And they sometimes lie. I've said that many times before. Employers say stuff that they don't mean because they're trying to be nice, and you may never hear from these folks again. So don't read anything between the lines on this. It just means maybe they'll be in touch, maybe they won't. After a week, I'd recontact them, as I mentioned before with that previous question, to see whether or not you were still under consideration. Whether you were still under consideration. When a software engineering recruiter sees that a candidate has applied to multiple positions not related to each other, do they feel like the candidate is desperate? Desperate isn't the right word. So let me simply say, by the way, if you're watching and you have a question for me, feel free to put it into chat. I'd be happy to answer it for you. What it does mean is that they see you as a serial applier. You could be blocked by them from applying to other things or being considered for other things because you're applying to different sorts of things. You're signaling to them, at best, you're a jack of all trades, master of none, that you have no deep expertise. As a result, there's a message in your behavior that they interpret. I don't think desperation is the scenario, but yes, you may think you're qualified for all of these things because you've dabbled at it, but your resume is going to tell them something very specific. So try to be clear about what you apply for and what you want to do so that in this way, you don't send a bad message to them that says, I applied for, I'm going to use an accounting, let me use a technology role because I know that better. I applied for a Java developer role. I applied for a program manager role. I applied for a C# role. I could go on with different categories. I applied for a VP job. These are all very different responsibilities and capabilities. You're not qualified to do all four of those examples. So which one are you? Are you a developer using Java? Are you a C# developer? Are you a program manager? Are you a VP? What are you? Stick with those. Don't screw around unless you are desperate. But that's not what the goal is. The more you do stuff like this, the more likely you are to be rejected because they smell BS. And as such, they just hit the delete key and move on and then block you from applying or being considered when you apply because you were as someone I interviewed years ago who's a corporate recruiter said, they are a serial applier. By that, I don't mean Kellogg's or a Post. I mean that you would just apply to everything. The company I had 3 interviews and a test with is putting up the job post again after they dropped it out a few days ago. They have many candidates already, and I haven't heard from them yet. Does this mean they think I'm not good enough? There's 2 real possibilities here. One is they haven't really looked at everyone yet, but they haven't really scheduled enough people in. So they certainly could be saying to you that, that from their standpoint, they haven't seen anyone whose background is good enough. Now, you said they had a lot of applications submitted, so I'm going to work with the assumption you were on LinkedIn and you saw how many people applied. Let's say it's more than 100. It could be more than 200, obviously. They're not sitting there reading resumes sequentially. They have a lot of different things concurrently. Maybe they've looked at 40 of them so far. Maybe. They haven't seen anyone that they like yet, so they put the job up again while they're still interviewing for other positions, taking meetings, doing exit interviews, and a whole host of other things. So they want to see more. However, the probability is you're not under consideration. because the statistical probability is you're one of 100, one of 200. They do quick skims. They're not really seeing things in a person's background that make them go, wow, I must talk to them. And as a result, you're in a situation where you've probably been passed over. And I would message them. I would simply say, uh, I applied 3 days ago. I haven't heard anything. Am I still under consideration or was I rejected? That clears things up. If they don't respond to that, consider a rejection, or they're overwhelmed, or they're discourteous. And whatever it is, nothing is good for you then. Again, if you've got a question for me, put it into chat. Be happy to answer. How do I make myself stand out during interviews when I have no experience? This is a common lament rookies have, that I have no experience. What do I do to get someone's attention? Now we're at the interview phase. And for many of you, it's not enough to say, I have a degree from so and so. I've done such and so. Like what you've done is going to look relatively trivial to them. So where you can stand out is, of course, in your internships. Did you have a quality internship? Do you present the internship in a way that demonstrates some significance, or do you trivialize it? The next way, and this is the most important way, is personality. Since so many of the people they're going to see are going to have comparable non-skills or non-experience, who you are as a person, your personality, your presence, your dynamism, your grace under pressure, how effortlessly and how caring you are about doing well, can come across and be the differentiator between you and the other rookies that they're interviewing. So who you are is really what has to come across. I don't know if you noticed, I know I did, that as I was answering this, I put a smile on my face and a twinkle in my eyes to kind of demonstrate an energy for them that shows I give a darn. I would have used the profane word there, but I don't want to do that here, but you know what that word is. It's important to demonstrate that you care about doing well, that it matters to you that you do well. And, how you talk about school and what you learn there and what you learn to avoid makes a difference. So the best way to do it is with your personality and presence. So, of course, dress well, whether you're on camera or in person. Let your personality shine, and they'll get you, and that's going to help you stand out from others. Here's another one. When someone asks you a question about something and they qualify the question with, "Now be honest with me," does this mean they don't trust you in your response? No. What they're trying to do is to get you to lower the veneer that you've put on and get to the real person. So remember, and I'll use the example of these rookies from a moment ago. Rookies tend to, shall we say, follow a standardized script of answers. As a result, people don't often open up their personality. So they want to see you. They want to get a sense of you and your character so that they can make a quality decision. That's really what it's about. The honesty comes across in the presentation, and that's about you're an actor. You're presenting on stage. It's how you communicate your lines that demonstrates credibility, believability, that they can trust you. And if I were answering a question like this, I would flip it for a moment and say, wow, is that about me or is it about all the other people that you've been talking to? They'll probably say it's about the other people that they've been talking to. And notice what you're doing is you're leveling the playing field and the power here. Because normally employers are up high, and as a job hunter, you're down low. But No one's ever going to accuse you of being distrustful. They'll talk about the other people they've spoken with. I've spoken to a lot of people who basically say the same stuff. And I'm just trying to get past the veneer. Oh, you don't have to worry about that with me. I'm a trustworthy kind of guy. I'm not going to lie to you. Uh, I'm a woman who cares. Um, I'll, I'll present it to you in a way that's respectful, but I'm not going to lie to you. And they'll probably smile and then listen to your answer carefully. So, again, start off by flipping the answer to them so that they have a chance to explain why it was they said that or asked that, so that this way you can connect with them personally. Last question for now. If someone has one that they can put into chat, I'd be happy to respond to it. I got let go from my job today with no explanation. How do you even cope with this? I was still in the learning process and giving it my all. So there's a lot that I don't know in answering this question. One of the things I don't know is, did they put you on a performance improvement plan previously? And you may have been giving it your all. It may not have been good enough. And thus they sent a message to you with the PIP, the performance improvement plan, to basically say, you got to step up your game or else. You may have been giving it your all, but they thought it was third rate. And thus they don't want to invest any more time in you. And there's a lot between those two poles that is also possible. So the fact that you were giving it your all and you were in the learning phase may be about you, but not about them and their needs. They may have wanted more from you than just being in the learning phase. So take your lessons and take your lumps. Next time, do differently and try and turn this thing around for the next organization. And when they interview you, I wouldn't sue this company, just to be clear about that, because I saw someone recommended that they sue. You don't do anything like that. I would go to HR and say, I'm just curious, help me here. I'm disappointed I was let go, but could you tell me why? What will be said to a potential employer when reference checks are done? So I understand and can make plans for it. If they say, don't use us as a reference, but I have to. So I would encourage you to provide me with a decent reference so that in this way, people don't read between the lines and hear that I was incompetent, because that can cause a problem for you. Because I know you don't want me not working ever again. And that's what your behavior or your firm's behavior might result in. So just give me a valid reference to say, yeah, he worked here, he did fine. What did his boss think? We had to make some cuts, and we let him go. But nothing critical about me. So the fact that you were in the learning phase, again, doesn't matter. It's what they decided was good for them that matters, and you didn't cut it. So that's all the questions I have for now. If you have one more while I'm doing the outro here, by all means, put it into chat. I'll cover it. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. Beginning next week, my Tuesday show and my Friday show are going to be at 9:15 Eastern. So if you have a question for me, you can email it to me in advance at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. In the subject line, put the phrase office hours. This way I know what it's about. I can put it aside and come back to it. It just makes it a little easier for me. As always, you can put your questions into chat. I'd love to help you. Also, I have some courses that are available that you can find out about on Udemy. That's Udemy. I have a course called The Ultimate Job Interview Framework. There's one about final interview preparation, and another one now about salary negotiation mistakes you want to avoid. go to udemy.com. I'll have a link on YouTube in the show notes, so you can use that. Frankly, I make a little bit more if you use my link. So if that's something of interest to you, be patient. Wait until New Year's Day. The links will definitely be in the notes then. Also want to say my website, thebiggamehunter.us, has a ton of great information. You can watch, listen to, or read. That will help you. You can also schedule time for a free discovery call or schedule time for coaching. I'd love to help you. And if this isn't the right time for you to do that, you can always put the address in your phone. Again, thebiggamehunter.us, and my name, Jeff Altman. Come back to it at a time where you need me. Okay. Lastly, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/the Big Game Hunter. I hope you have a terrific day, and most importantly, be great. Happy New Year and best wishes.